Being the main character in an MMO can make you feel like the most powerful being imaginable, and that's true. You are. The most powerful being deserves the most powerful weapon, but what if your weapon was so powerful even the game lore recognized it as such? Obtaining a weapon that's actually part of the game's lore and story isn't something you can do in every MMO. World of Warcraft actually does this quite well with weapons like Sulfurous, Thunder Fury, Warglaives of Azeroth, but did you know that in our very own Guild Wars 2 you can also get lore important weapons? There's in fact many weapons that are from some part of the game lore or references to the game lore, and I am here in this video to show you those weapons. First one is the Shining Blade, not to be confused with the Royal Guard faction of the same name, although it does belong to them and the Shining Blade sword was actually named after them. Just to avoid confusion here, I'm going to refer to the faction as the Royal Guard. The exact origins of this sword isn't fully known. However, what we do know, it has ties to the Seer race. It's likely that they created it. The Shining Blade is sometimes referred to as an ancient Seer artifact. It's said that it was gifted to the Royal Guard after the Crichtons defeated the Mursat in the Crichton Civil War. For those who are unfamiliar, the Mursat used to hold complete control over the humans in Kryta. The White Mantle helped them do this, but the Royal Guard would start a civil war which would overthrow the White Mantle and the Mursat. It's unclear who exactly gifted the Shining Blade to the humans, but it is known that it had to be a Seer, since the Shining Blade was specifically for hunting down and killing the last surviving Mursat. It only makes sense that the Seers, who were the rivals of the Mursat, would give this sword to the humans so that they could hunt down and kill the rest of the Mursat. The Shining Blade now resides in the Royal Guard headquarters. It's used as part of an oath ritual when new Royal Guard members are sworn into service. Now, if you want the Shining Blade for yourself, you're gonna have to follow the Legendary Weapon Crafting Guide. Since it's a legendary weapon, it'll take a lot of time and effort and crafting for you to get it. Next is Khalid Bolg, a greatsword created straight from the Pale Tree herself. It's said that the Pale Tree created this from a thorn on her body and then gifted it to one of her firstborn sons. This firstborn son being Rhiannoch, the firstborn knight. However, it would eventually be passed on to Traherne. However, Rhiannoch was originally given it so he could complete his wild hunt of defeating Mazdak the Accursed. Mazdak was a powerful lich risen by Zaitan. As a risen lich, he couldn't be harmed by any normal weapons. This is why the Pale Tree created Khalid Bolg, so Rhiannoch could harm Mazdak. In fact, many other risen champions who seemed invincible were able to be defeated by using Khalid Bolg. Khalid Bolg is thought to be a living thing, almost like an extension of the Pale Tree. It can actually enhance the abilities of the wielder, either making them stronger, wise, or brave. If you want Khalid Bolg for yourself, there is a side story quest line that you will have to complete. After the Heart of Thorns story, you will get access to the Knight of the Thorn storyline. This storyline is all about claiming Khalid Bolg for yourself. It will require lots of traveling around and collecting items. And upon completion, you can get one of 5 Khalid Bolg themed weapons. But if you go the extra distance and unlock all 5, you can unlock the original Khalid Bolg greatsword that Rhiannoch and Traherne had. Claw of the Conqueror, the dagger that is the most sacred artifact of the Char. This is probably the most highly valued weapon in the eyes of the Char, mostly for what it represents. It originally belonged to the first and only true Conqueror, who was the supreme ruler of all Char. And they were the one who united each legion to come together to form one empire. It's said that any Char imperators are technically descendants of the first Conqueror. Now, whether that be by blood or just rank association is unclear. I believe the first imperators were related by blood, but I doubt the imperators today are. The claw represents not just being Conqueror, but the power of the title and the responsibility it holds. It's a symbol that represents every great deed ever accomplished by anyone who's wielded it, and even deeds accomplished by those serving under it. The Char hold a great deal of respect towards this artifact. A Char will only claim this as their own if they know that they are truly worthy of it. In fact, a Char can only claim it if they are chosen to be Conqueror. To do that, they must achieve the rank of Imperator, they must perform great deeds of valor to prove their strength and leadership, and they have to have the support of all other legions. Just like the Shining Blade, Claw of the Conqueror is a legendary weapon, so I suppose it is pretty straightforward to get. Just follow the Legendary Crafting Guide. But if you do, You got a lot of work to do. Okay, I've got one more legendary weapon, the Warhorn Verderach. There's not a whole lot to be said about this one except for what's in the flavor text for the weapon, so let's read through that. When Grenth's powers were raw and new, he created a weapon more sinister than he intended. Verderach summons victims of horrific battles as vengeful wraiths, eager to conscript the newly slain. Now I think that would imply that Verderach is a warhorn originally belonging to Grenth. So this is literally a god's weapon. It actually has two forms, a physical one when wielded and a spectral one when stowed. It's said that when it fades into the spectral version, it's actually fading into the underworld. So when that happens, that's when those wraiths are dragging the new souls down to the underworld with them. Now, like I said, this is a legendary weapon, so this is another one where all you really have to do is just follow along the legendary crafting guidelines. Staff of the Inevitable. Palawa Joko is a character who probably needs no introduction. Even if you've never played through any of the story steps that he's involved in, chances are you've at least seen some of the praise Joko memes around the game. If by chance you don't know him, Palawa Ignatius Joko is the undead lich and self-appointed king of Alona. Self-appointed because none of the nations of Alona really hold any loyalty to him. He rules by force due to his mastery of death magic, which has allowed him to raise an army of awakened soldiers. In fact, if we look at the Alonian royalty tree, it's unclear who exactly Joko is related to. As far as the known lore is concerned, he's only related to an Alonian diplomat, not royalty. It's also unclear where he came from. He just sort of showed up and decided to challenge for the throne, and also spread mass misinformation about the history of the world to make it look like he's some sort of god. Now, getting back to his staff, the iconic weapon known as the Staff of the Inevitable. You can get it for yourself pretty easily just by completing a collection. The collection is called Dark Tools for Dark Times. It's part of Living World Season 4, Episode 4. It's very simple, and there's a detailed guide on the wiki, but upon finishing that story episode, you may already be part of the way finished to completing the collection. The Eternal Blade, the sword once belonging to Tarai Asa. Tarai Asa has a lot of lore and story he's involved in, and I'm not going to break down all of it. All you need to know for now is he was the first Alonian king after the Primeval Dynasty. He fought and defeated Palawa Joko, and he led his people to ascend at Aguri Rock. In Guild Wars 1, he had two appearances, one while he was alive, and the other while he was a spirit, or a ghostly hero. When he's alive, he uses Tarai's sword, but as a ghostly hero, he uses the Eternal Blade. You could get both of his weapons in Guild Wars 1, but here in Guild Wars 2, you can only get the Eternal Blade. To do so, you need to complete the Echoes of the Obscure collection as part of the Secrets of the Obscure expansion. Now, seeing as some of the collection steps reference Tarai Asa, and the collection says acquire a powerful and ancient weapon, I think it's safe to assume that this is the very same sword used by the ghostly Tarai Asa in Guild Wars 1. Now, I'd also like to mention a few weapons that are simply references to the game lore. They may not be directly from the lore or story, but they do still have a relation to it. Also, for those interested, some of these can just be bought straight off the trading post. Lord Terrace's Shadow. This is named after Eternal Lord Terrace. He was a part of Balthazar's eternal army in the Fissure of Woe. In Guild Wars 1, you could find him there in the Temple of War. He was part of the Tower of Strength quest. However, he doesn't wield this weapon himself, it's just named after him. Fun fact, he actually wields an Eternal Blade. Not the one used by Tarai Asa, just a replica of it. Anton's Boot Blade, a dagger named after the assassin hero Anton, who is still in the game today, although now he's just a ghost. This dagger has the same appearance as the butterfly knives in Guild Wars 1, which were Anton's default weapon. So maybe you could argue that Anton's Boot Blade is Anton's actual dagger. Jorah's Defender, named after the warrior hero Jorah. My personal favorite hero. Jorah is also regarded as a legendary hero among the Norn. You can find statues and references to her all over the Norn homeland. Jorah's default equipment was a sword and shield, and her shield had the same appearance as Jorah's Defender. So I guess again, technically, you could argue that this is actually her shield. There are two torches, Raz's Nightmare and Fate of Menzies. They're very similar in appearance. One's blue and the other's orange. First one's named after the hero Raza, who would join you after you complete his quest line. And the other is named after Menzies the Mad, who is Balthazar's evil half-brother who led the Shadow Army. You would actually fight him and his Shadow Army in the Fissure of Woe. There are also a bunch of weapons that are just skins copied straight from Guild Wars 1. There isn't any lore behind them, such as Krytus Salvation, Faithful, Winged Spatha, Fiery Dragon Sword, Elemental Sword, Diamond Aegis, Kraita's Embrace, the Destroyer weapons, Tormented weapons, Chaos weapons. There are actually a lot of them out there, so you have a lot of opportunities to pay homage to the original game. So that's going to be a wrap on this one. You know, I've seen before players mention that they're a little disappointed that you can't get a weapon that's actually from the game lore. But if you do some research, that couldn't be further from the truth. There are many out there, and hey, there may be many more that could also be added to the list. So if you know of any, go ahead and share with the group. Let me know if you have any of these weapons or if you now plan to get them after learning about them. Anyways, that'll be all for this one. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.